Hey guys, sorry this review took so long, but before I get into it, I wanted to say real quick that this is the second God of War that I have beat, with the first one being from 2018. I have very minimal experience with the Greek mythology series, but from my understanding, those games are very different from the Norse duology. Another thing, there is a lot to talk about, so forgive me if I don't mention certain details, as I'll be sticking as close to the general idea of the plot as much as possible to keep this video's length reasonable. Since there is so much to talk about, let's get started. Okay, so this game takes place right after God of War 2018, in which I recommend playing first before jumping into this game. I should review that game sometime now that I'm talking about this. The game opens up with Kratos chilling by the fire in a cave when his teenage son Atreus comes back from hunting. It is currently winter with snow everywhere where Kratos and Atreus live. They ride home via wolves pulling their sled, but as they are riding, Freya comes in and attacks Kratos because he killed her son in the last game. It was because her son was trying to kill her, so Kratos saved her life by eliminating him. But saving her life or not, she is still mad at him for taking her son. Although Freya's hair was blonde, not dark in the actual mythology, but I still like her character design. They ended up shaking her off as they made through the protection barrier around their home. Once they get home, Atreus has a few last moments with his pet wolf named Fenrir as he is dying. Although in the actual mythology, he's actually Loki's child, not pet. Not only that, but Fenrir is huge, but moving on. Atreus casts a spell on the dying Fenrir, but we will get into what the spell is later. And after that, Kratos pushed his son for training to fight their enemies. Jeez, Kratos, your son just lost a pet. Let him mourn. They butt heads for a bit before Atreus asks Kratos to be alone with Fenrir. Kratos walks into his house with Mimir, who is just ahead. They talk a bit about what just happened and Kratos goes to sleep. However, he woke up from a dream about him and his late wife Faye. Him and Mimir realize Atreus had not been back for a while. They track him down, but then Kratos had to fight a bear, which then turns back into Atreus, his son. So Atreus being able to transform into animals does not really have much significance to the plot, but it does have significance to the gameplay that I will talk about next time. They all head back to the house, but is interrupted by none other than who else would be famous for hammer and thunder besides Thor. Okay, I get it. He does not look shredded like he does in the Marvel movies, but this game takes inspiration from the actual mythology, not Marvel. Thus is the reason why he is a ginger, and since he loves to drink, he has a beer belly. Odin the Allfather also shows up to the doorstep. He tries to strike a deal with Kratos to have peace for both of them, as relatives of Odin and Thor are dead because of previous games events. Odin tries coming up with reasonable negotiations for both parties, but Mimir calls hogwash on this whole deal, and Kratos says no without a second thought. I am not going to pretend I know what happens in the Greek series, but I think it's safe to assume that Kratos was burned by Greek gods in the past, because I did hear they were mainly revenge stories against Greek gods, and Kratos does reference his past through conversations with other characters throughout the game. After an awesome fight against Thor, Kratos goes back to his house to see if his son is okay. During the conversation with Odin, it was revealed that Atreus was looking for Tyr, the Norse god of war, and as you can see, Kratos was not too happy about that, as Atreus was doing it behind his father's back. Kratos is not exactly the most laid-back father, which is why Atreus did not ask his father permission, but I also understand that Kratos is concerned for his son when he's out of sight. So after butting heads again, Atreus leads Kratos with Mimir's head on his belt to a prophecy that shows Tyr leading the armies against Odin. The prophecies that this game tends to show do not really amount to much because, spoiler, that did not happen in this game. And Mimir mentioned Odin killed Tyr during this part, so let's press on. Given all the hints they gather from this, they decide to look in the realm of Svartalfheim. They first stop at Brock and Sindri's house in an obscure part of Yggdrasil, the world tree that connects all 9 realms in Norse mythology, and establish a secret hideout. Kratos, Atreus, and Mimir travel to Svartalfheim, the realm I just mentioned. They rescue Tyr from his prison and bring him back to the dwarves' house, which is what I'm going to call Brock and Sindri's house going forward, as they are both dwarves. Atreus then sneaks out with Sindri, as that's what he's been doing behind his father's back. Atreus goes back to Midgard to hopefully convince the vengeful Freya to be an ally, while Sindri thinks it's a bad idea but tags along anyway. Atreus meets Freya, but she was not happy to see him due to who his father is, but Atreus still tries to convince that Odin is a common enemy to both of them. Freya does not exactly change her mind, but this moment is important for later. Sindri and Atreus go back to the dwarf's house, barely getting away with sneaking out as Kratos did not catch on. Kratos, Mimir, Tyr, and Atreus go to Alfheim to seek out another prophecy that basically foreshadows the end of the game. Atreus mentions that Tyr is to lead the army against Asgard, but Tyr just so happens to be a pacifist in this game and gets sidelined until towards the end of the game. Well, so much for rescuing Tyr. Father and son butt heads again, making the tension rise higher. Atreus goes to bed early but teleports to the realm of Jotunheim while doing so and meets with Angrboda. Now, if you've played this game, you may have been wondering why I have not been referring to Atreus as Loki, which is his other name that ended up being teased in the last game. First, Loki, Atreus, I'll stick with Atreus, is not a villain in this game like you would probably expect thanks to Marvel. In the actual mythology, to quote Neil Gaiman's book, Norse Mythology, Loki is very handsome, he is plausible, convincing, likable, and far away the most wily, subtle, and shrewd of all the inhabitants of Asgard. It is a pity then that there is so much darkness inside him, so much anger, so much envy, so much lust. Not even Odin is as cunning as Loki. And, get this, Loki makes the world more interesting but less safe. He is the father of monsters, the author of woes, the sly god. And not all of that describes Atreus, I would say. Atreus is a very well-meaning character who wants to help others, even though, like Loki, he does get himself in trouble a little bit, but not intentionally, unlike Loki. But there's a later part in this game's story where he has to fix a mistake he makes. This mistake is when he let Garm, who is a giant wolf, go free, as Atreus loves animals. Everyone around him does get mad because Garm starts tearing at holes between the realms as monsters from Helheim travel to other realms, which can be taken care of in a side quest. Kratos and Atreus does take care of Garm at one point in the story. Do you remember that spell Atreus used as Fenrir was dying? Once Garm was defeated, Atreus cast a spell on Garm to put Fenrir's soul into Garm, which makes Garm Fenrir at the size he is supposed to be and no longer dangerous. Loki in the mythology has had to fix mistakes he made, but unlike Atreus, Loki is the type who would take a prank too far, as he is the trickster type. One time Loki cut off the hair of Thor's wife and she got angry, then Thor got angry and then made Loki fix it because Thor threatened to break every bone in Loki's body. Atreus is not like that, which makes it to where he lacks a very key personality trait of Loki. The ways he is like Loki is very subtle, and I get it. The mythology had to be altered a bit to fit Kratos into the story, but I think Loki being another name for Atreus really does not amount to much. Might as well not call Atreus Loki at all. Then again, I guess a separate character named Loki would just be shoehorned into the plot, and you really can't have Norse mythology without Odin, Thor, or Loki. Now let's rewind back to where I went off tangent. Atreus and Angrboda spent quite a bit of time and see more prophecies, and Atreus freaks out as a prophecy specified that his father will die and that he will serve Odin. Atreus does spend a lot of time here with Angrboda, but that's the main takeaway here. However, I did see online that Thor was meant to kill Kratos at first, but Kratos Kratos does not die in this plot, so this plot point has no real payoff in my opinion. Mainly these prophecies have served to be reasons why our heroes go to this or that location, and since Kratos and Atreus see the prophecies in completely different ways, they butt heads over them, which is essentially what they amount to. From what I can tell, they more so contribute to the father-son relationship more than anything else. Atreus falls asleep in Jotunheim, meaning to go back to the dwarf's house, but teleports to his house in Midgard, and a worried Kratos finds his son and tells him he's been missing for 2 days, but then Freya comes along as a boss. After the boss fight, she calls a temporary truce. Kratos tells his son to go back to the dwarf's house. She begrudgingly teams up with Kratos to break the curse that makes her stuck on Midgard, but is able to temporarily travel to Vanaheim because of a protection spell. They both fight Nidhogg, which is an awesome fight by the way, and it makes Freya able to travel between realms. Freya and Kratos then team up from this point forward as they make amends and figure out that Odin is the bigger issue. Back at the dwarf's house, Atreus and Kratos butt heads over their differences again, and then Atreus runs away to Odin. He works with Odin to gain knowledge on how to stop Ragnarok, which is basically an apocalyptic war in the end times of Norse mythology. Odin has Atreus put together this that's supposedly a key to the knowledge Odin is after. Kratos is troubled by his son missing, so he is willing to do whatever to get his son back. Atreus does go back to his father after a while, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the point where they come together again. I know I'm skipping certain details about Heimdall and the spear, but I will talk about that in the gameplay section of this review. I admit, stories about friends like in Persona resonate with me more, but we actually get some really tender moments when Atreus and Kratos come together again. It definitely made me emotional as this father and son relationship was well written. It is clear they care for one another, and it goes to show that Kratos has grown a lot as a person. God, as in this game, he struggles to accept his son as he is and not as he wants, and Atreus is a teenager who is struggling to mold his character into what he wants that also makes him different from his father. Kratos has grown from this to this.
I am sorry.
Don't be sorry, Father. Be better.
I could give this story a 10 out of 10 for this reason, but I'm dropping it into a 9 because of how Odin is handled as the villain here. For most of the game, he is this calm and reasonable person, and you, the player, are going against him because everyone says he's bad, mainly. In my opinion, there's not enough show, don't tell. It was not until this moment late in the game where Atreus goes back to Odin to be a spy of sorts, and from this moment, I could see how Odin was the villain going forward.
Your daughter is old enough to make her own mistakes, and your husband started drinking again, all on his own. Dismissed!
This moment is where he struck me as the kind of person who is very narcissistic, self-righteous, and shifts the blame on others even if he's the one responsible. Of course, Atreus barely escapes Odin by teleport that Sindri gave him with the mask complete to prevent Odin from achieving his goals. Back at the dwarf's house, Tyr acts strange, but when confronted by Brock, Tyr shockingly stabs Brock, but wait, that was not Tyr. It was Odin spying the whole time. And going forward, Odin does one villainous deed after another. Before all of this, it was just the characters mentioning,
what other heinous crimes has my grandfather committed?
Let's see. He decimated Vanaheim, tortured Tyr, murdered Groa, murdered Ymir.
You forgot to mention that he wet farted into someone's face after drinking mead. It was after this that our heroes gather everyone for war, and it turns out Kratos leads the armies against Odin and not Tyr. During this war is a bunch of battles, and after one against Thor, Odin kills his own son after not following his orders, and given what we know about Odin now, Odin naturally blames Thor for dying because Odin's mentality is he would not have died if he did what he asked. Odin then gets defeated. Kratos and Atreus have another emotional moment as they part ways on good terms, as Atreus is now a man going on a new adventure. Kratos accepts this and he stays behind, partnering with Freya, rebuilding the world as you, the player, taking on side quests you have not done yet. The credits do roll here, but wait, we got to attend Brock's funeral. Okay, story now over. Next time will be part 2 as I talk about the gameplay. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Have a fantastic night, and take care.